Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer deck tech, and today we're going to be talking about budget Azorius control. I'm very excited to share this very cool, unique list with you. As always, at the end of the video, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the list? What would you use to upgrade the deck, to get it closer to regular Azorius control? And if you have any suggestions for upcoming videos, just let me know in the comment section below. And before we get started here, a couple things I want to go over. The first thing, huge shout out to Mazowski in the comment section. I don't remember what video it was, but they'd recommended that I do a budget Azorius control deck for Pioneer. And I was like, I've never actually done one for Pioneer, so why don't we throw it on the schedule? So huge shout out to Mazowski. And if you have any suggestions, feel free to let me know in the comment section. The other thing I want to talk about is, I'll be honest with you, I'm not the biggest control mage. So if things look a little clunky, or what would you change, I guess, is letting me know. If you're a big control player, how would you personally build a budget Azorius control list in Pioneer? Also, just let me know in the comment section. But let's go ahead and hop into it here. So, all right, some of our early drops that we're playing. We're playing 4 Opt. It's a really, really good draw spell, and it's very, very good on a budget. Our main removal spells that we're playing, that's, targeted removal, we're playing 4 Laydown Arms and 4 Fateful Absence. So, all right, spoiler alert, we are a Laydown Arms deck. I've always been a huge fan of this card. I know I recently featured it on a different deck here on the channel, just because it's a really, really efficient removal spell. It scales really, really well. It's pretty much good at most points in the game for the most part. Definitely a huge fan of Laydown Arms. Fateful Absence is essentially a budget alternative of Get Lost. Get Lost really just hits, I believe it's either an artifact or enchantment. I'm pretty sure it's an enchantment. It can also hit, but for the most part, it's very, very close in terms of overall power level. And guess what? Get Lost, they're like $5-6 a piece, US dollars, and Fateful Absence is not even $1. So that's why we're playing 4 of those. Definitely a huge fan of the card. If you like to play budget decks, I highly suggest picking up some copies of Fateful Absence. So, next slide here. These are the counter spells that we're playing. We're playing 4 Censor and 4 No More Lies. Censor has always been good. I'm a huge fan of the card in general. Even when it's bad, you just, cycle it, draw a new card. No More Lies is fantastic, though. It's a huge card for Murders at Karlov Manor that recently came out. It really boosted blue-white control in general. And guess what? We also get to play No More Lies. So definitely a huge fan of the card. I've been talking about for a long time how we should get Mana Leak in Pioneer, and this is pretty much just Mana Leak, except it's blue-white, so definitely a huge fan of the card. Next slide here, some of our, I don't even know really how to say it, I guess some more of our removal, and then also one of the best cards in the deck. We're playing 2 Detention Sphere. I wanted a removal spell that's able to just kind of hit everything for the most part, and that's exactly what Detention Sphere does. It can exile a non-land permanent not named Detention Sphere. So, I mean, if our opponent's playing Detention Sphere, we can't exile their Detention Sphere with Detention Sphere, which is pretty funny, but definitely a huge fan of the card. It's fantastic. It doesn't really see a lot of play anymore. I think a lot of it's because of Beseiju, but, really, as long as our opponent's not playing Beseiju, Detention Sphere is awesome. We're also playing 4 copies of Supreme Verdict. So one thing that's really, really cool, and I guess I forgot to mention this, was, over a year ago, I built a budget blue-white control list for Modern specifically. And I wasn't able to feature Supreme Verdict because, I think at the time they were going for like $6-7 a piece, and it really didn't fit our budget list very well. But Supreme Verdict has been getting reprinted a lot recently, so we can get them for about $2 a piece now, which is perfect for our budget list. I just wanted to mention that. Huge fan of Supreme Verdict. And we're also playing 4 Memory Deluge. This card is really, really good, and it's very, very budget friendly. It's basically like a kind of like a fact or fiction in a way. I'm just a huge fan of Memory Deluge. It's good early game. It's good late game because we can just flash it back, look at even more cards. Memory Deluge is a awesome card. Huge fan of it. So our last slide here is, I guess, kind of our win cons, but also just the Planeswalkers that we're playing. We're playing 2 Narset Parter Veils. Card has always been good. Huge fan of it. The -2 being able to impulse is just really, really strong. Then we're playing 1 Jace Architect of Thought. I'll be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure if this is necessarily the best format of Planeswalker that we could be playing. I know there's a couple different ones we could, but, a lot of it was because, a lot of people used to play Jace Architect of Thought back in the day. It was kind of everywhere for the most part. Played it in Standard, even played it in Modern a little bit. And you want to know what? The card is still pretty solid, even though it's fallen off a little bit. Obviously the +1 can be really good against decks that are looking to go wide. The -2 is a mini factor fiction, and then the -8 is the -8 for the most part. So definitely a huge fan of Jace Architect of Thought. I would say our real win condition, though, is Elspeth Sun's Champion. This card is still really, really good. It doesn't see a lot of play anymore. It also just got a reprint recently in one of the Commander Masters Commander deck. So you can get them for about $1 a piece, which is really, really sweet. But, Elspeth, if the board is clear and we slam Elspeth and start making tokens, we're still going to be taking people out of the game. It doesn't matter even if this card's fallen off a little bit. So definitely a big fan of Elspeth Sun's Champion. I would say like that and Jace is like our budget Teferi / Wandering Emperor, because we really don't have access to those in our budget list. So that's the entire main board. Let's go and hop into the lands real quick, which I would say is pretty simple. So obviously we're a lay down arms deck. We're going to be wanting a lot of planes. So we're playing 4 copies of Meticulous Archive, the brand new Surveillant from Murders at Karlov Manor. Then we're also playing 4 Irrigated Farmland and 4 Prairie Stream. Obviously it's very important because they have the planes typing on them. We're also playing 2 Glacial Fortress, 2 Restless Anchorage, and 2 Field of Ruin. Glacial Fortress is really, really good because guess what? We're playing a whole bunch of lands that have the plains island typing. So Glacial Fortress is almost always going to come into play untapped. Normally I would play Deserted Beach, but Glacial Fortress, funny enough, is actually cheaper in terms of, US dollars. It's like less than $1 for Glacial Fortress. So it kind of makes sense to play that. Restless Anchorage is really, really good in general. It's a great man land. Late game, we get the board clear, and then we just kind of start chipping in with Restless Anchorage, get some value because we can make map tokens and explore. Restless Anchorage is just really, really good. Field of Ruin is pretty self-explanatory. It's good to getting rid of those pesky man lands or like a Thespian Sage before it copies a Lotus Field. It's just really, really good. Why wouldn't we play it? And then rounding out our lands, we're playing 3 islands and 4 plains. And as our basic land of the day that's really, really spicy, we're playing the Alana Danner Azorius lands that were featured in the guild kit a couple of years ago. And also, huge shout out to Alana Danner. Actually met Alana Danner at MagicCon Chicago. Super fantastic artist. She was very, very nice when I met her, and her artwork is also just fantastic. So huge shout out to Alana Danner. You are fantastic. So last thing we got to talk about is our sideboard as well as some upgrade options for the deck. Sideboarding is really, really simple. We're going to want a little bit of graveyard hate for like the Phoenix decks and, different graveyard shenanigans strategies in the metagame, which, rest in peace, is by far and away our best option. It's also very, very budget friendly because of its recent reprinting. I put late game threats. So the ones that I'm personally featuring is like Baneslayer Angel. I think Baneslayer is really, really sweet. I'm also forgetting the name of it. Dream Trawler. It's the blue-white Sphinx. That card is very, very good as a late game threat. Extra removal. There's really a lot of different cards you could play. The one that I'm playing currently in the sideboard is it's like 1 and a white from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. It phases a creature out, but if it's black, it's just exiled, so it's really good against like Shieldred or, I would say Vein Ripper, but most of the time we're not going to have a creature to be able to use for that. So, but also to beat Vein Ripper, I'm playing Blessed Alliance. It's also just a really good card in general. We can gain some life, make him sacrifice an attacking creature. But that's personally what I'm playing to kind of help take out Vein Ripper. And then I would also play some Mystical Disputes in the sideboard. It's very budget friendly. And guess what? All the blue decks are going to be bringing in Mystical Disputes against us. So we're going to bring it in against them for their Mystical Disputes for the most part. So definitely a big fan of Mystical Dispute. But, the sideboard, especially for blue-white control, change it to what your metagame looks like. If there's a lot of red-green, obviously play like some Aether Gust, for instance. Always don't be afraid to go ahead and change up your sideboard based on your local metagame. And the last thing we got to talk about is some upgrade options, which is pretty simple overall. So obviously the Channel Lands and Hallowed Fountain are fantastic. Hallowed Fountain's really, really good, especially because of Laydown Arms. It's got the plains island typing, but the Channel Lands are also really good, very self-explanatory. And then obviously in terms of upgrade options, Azorius Control is already a deck in the format. Pretty much just try to make it look like that. Get some Shark Typhoons, some Farewells, some Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, the Wandering Emperor. For the most part, there's already, Blue-White Control is already a pretty established deck in the format. It's really just as time goes on, if we're able to pick some up, slowly upgrade the deck over time. But the one thing I want to mention is the current list as it is right now is only $75 US for a pretty strong deck. So, buy the, the budget version and then just kind of go from there if you feel like upgrading it. But guess what? Even if you don't feel like upgrading it, that's perfectly fine. This deck will perform just fine, if you're playing with friends or you're playing at your local F&M, this deck will definitely it'll definitely put in some work for only $75. So definitely a huge fan of this very cool list. I typically don't play Control for the most part, but I would definitely play this list because I'm a huge fan of budget decks in general. So that takes us to the end of the video. Just let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the deck? What would you personally do for your upgrades, or different budget alternatives? Just let me know in the comment section. So I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.